Hey there, everybody. My name is Varun Sriram. I'm with UCAN, and I want to welcome you to Mastering Your Marathon. We've got an unbelievable session this afternoon with American record holder Keira D'Amato. Hey, Keira, how's it going? And Coach Pete Rea from Zap Endurance. Pete, thank you guys so much for joining us. Really excited to have you guys here for the next 45 minutes or so. I see the people streaming in live, so we've got hundreds of people still coming in right now that are joining us this afternoon to talk about mastering your marathon, and really who better to talk to about mastering the marathon. We have Keira, who set the American marathon record, broke the longstanding record in early 2022. It's since been broken, but at the same time, we know Keira is coming right back for it. She also is the American 10-mile record holder, so she's got a lot of knowledge and experience about racing your best. And Pete, he's coached elite athletes, Olympic trials qualifiers, Olympians. He's coached hundreds of adults, or thousands, I should say, of adult runners who've qualified for Boston, who've done amazing things, masters athletes. So these are two of the best folks that you can hear from when it comes to talking about the marathon. So guys, let's jump right into it. And Keira, I will give you the first word here. It's funny, I saw you in Boston a short while ago, and at another event, and when you were asked how you wanted to be introed, I think you said, one of the funniest runners, best looking. What else was it? I'll let you take it from there.
Oh man, see, the reason why I tell people what to say, so people say this about me and not me having to say it, but I said I have really good jokes, really good looking, and okay dancer, but I really go for it. So when I'm dancing, I'm really having a good time. Terrible speller, but a great parallel parker. And I'm a Libra. So that's what I told them. And none of that actually was said about me.
Well, those are amazing traits that you have. You also have some amazing running traits. Tell us some. You have quite the story as a runner. Accomplished collegiate runner, took a long break, got back into the sport, and you've done some incredible things since then. So tell us a little bit about your journey in the sport of running.
Yeah, like I will make this brief. I know I can be a little long-winded, but I started back in high school as a way to impress the soccer coach. And at my first race, I was like, this is terrible. I'm going to quit. Why do people do this? And I didn't quit. I ran through that and I finished, and I was so proud of myself. And then I was like, wow, actually that was awesome. Like, it was really bad, and I proved to myself I could. And so I got that whole cycle of it sucking and pushing through, and then being really proud that I surprised myself. And in the next race, I was like, this is going to be awesome. And I went through that same cycle. But I learned pretty early on in running that that's kind of what running is about, is doing something that scares you and working through, and then being really proud of yourself for pushing through. And I became just immediately learned that I'm a runner. Like, these are my people, this is my sport, and I can do this. So I ran in high school and college, and then a little bit post-collegiately before I got injured. I took an 8-year break where I thought I was never going to run again, like at an elite level. I thought that maybe I could go and do a local 5K, but after having 2 kids and just needing a little something for myself and a little space in a kind of crazy life, I started running again just for me, and started small and then grew bigger and bigger. And then I thought, well, maybe I can do a whole marathon, and I have been able to do a whole marathon. So that's my story in a nutshell.
How many marathons have you done to date?
I think I've done 14. Yeah. And the first one I did was a lot of walking. And I told myself, I'm not a marathon runner. Like, similar to my first race ever, I was like, this isn't for me. I'm not a marathoner. I don't know why people do this, but I finished, and I was really proud of myself for finished despite all the walking. And then I was like, well, now I have to do another one and try to run the whole way. But yeah, so just got hooked.
So from your first race thinking you weren't a marathoner, share with everybody what your fastest marathon time is.
Yeah, so I ran last year in 2022 at the Chevron Houston Marathon. I ran 2:19:12, which was the American record for a brief time, but I'll take it. So now I'm just the former American record holder in the marathon, but that was over an hour and a half faster than my first marathon. So I've come a long way.
Absolutely. And that's really a testament to anybody, whatever level they're starting at. If you can do certain things in terms of your training, in terms of your fueling, which is what we're going to talk about today, major improvement is possible in the marathon. Well, Keira, thanks for sharing a little bit about yourself. Let's hear from Coach Pete Rea. So Pete, tell us a little bit about your experience, both as a runner as well as what got you into coaching.
Sure. I grew up around the sport. My mother was running road races in Connecticut in the early to mid 1970s when there weren't a lot of women running road races, and started running as a high schooler and did fairly well, and then ran collegiately at the University of Connecticut. I do want to point out NCAA champions basketball last week. Go Huskies. But anyway, but I was always passionate about figuring out what made athletes work. I spent my summers all through high school, all through college, and after college at a running center in northern Vermont, and was fortunate to be around people like Craig Holm and the guy who's still my coaching mentor, Peter Fitzinger, who won the 1984 Olympic marathon trials. And I just I loved figuring out what worked for athletes of all ages and abilities, whether you're the 70-year-old running your first 5K or you're the individual who qualifies for Boston every year. I was hooked from the time I coached the first high school athlete that I worked with in the early 90s, coached club, and then I was hired as the assistant coach here at a new post-collegiate running center in 2001. I was hired as an assistant coach, and I've been head coach since 2002 here, and been fortunate to work with 68 pros in 22 years, and lots and lots of running campers from all over the world who come to summer adult camps here, from the ages of 16 to I think 86 is the oldest camper we've had at ZAP. So coaching is my passion, and I love the Rubik's Cube that is each individual athlete and figuring them out.
Awesome. And what I really love about having both of you on here for this discussion today is just the wide range of perspective that you can offer. Like Pete, you've worked, of course, like you just shared, with athletes of all different levels and that have very different goals and very different starting points in terms of where they're starting with the marathon. And Keira, for you, I think even as a pro, you've sort of experienced life as not a pro athlete, right? So yeah, that's been, it's I think for both of you guys, it's going to be really valuable, the insight you're able to share with people on here today who obviously are, at varying levels when it comes to the marathon. So let's dive right into it. There's a few components that we're going to really focus on today. We'll start with training, and then we'll move over to nutrition and fueling, kind of the two major aspects of having success in the marathon. So Pete, let's start with you this time. In terms of training for the marathon, like what are some of the foundational basics that no matter if you're doing your 15th, like Keira will be doing soon, or whether you're doing your first, these are things that you should stick to and follow?
Right. I might sound a little bit old school here, because I do believe one of the things that we're seeing globally in marathon running is that what's new is old and what's old is new. And that, there's three things in training that we all can manipulate. You can manipulate the frequency of how often you run. You can manipulate the intensity of how hard you run. And you can manipulate how much you run. Frequency, intensity, and duration. And I think one of the best pieces of coaching advice I ever got was from Toshiko Seiko, who was multiple-time world #1 Japanese marathoner who works for their federation now. And he said out loud in a conference I went to, he said, look, time on your feet is the most important thing in marathon prep. For other events, look, how often you run or how hard you run, those things are important in marathon prep. But if you had to pick one of the three elements that you could manipulate, spending time on your feet is the most important thing in marathon prep. So as you're trying to become a better marathon runner, or perhaps a first-time marathoner, if it's that 4-mile run that you do around your neighborhood and you're thinking, should I add an extra half mile today? I feel pretty good. Do so. If it's that 10-mile run that you have in the park that you love and you're preparing for your first marathon, you're thinking, should I add an extra 8, 9, 10 minutes and put in an extra half mile or mile today? Do so. How much time you spend on your feet is important in marathon prep, period.
Yeah, absolutely. What can you add to that for you, training for the marathons? Like when you're gearing up for a marathon cycle, what are you really focusing on when it comes to the training?
Yeah, and I love what Pete just said, a lot time on feet. I think the most important tool you have in training is your long run, and slowly, patiently building that up week after week. And I feel like with my marathon training, like before it became intentional, I messed up a lot and I had made a lot of mistakes, which really I learned a lot. So I think the first thing I would tell anyone that's about to do a marathon is congratulations on being brave enough to start, because I think it takes a lot of courage to sign up, whether it's your first or your 15th. I think just signing up and saying, I'm going to do this again, I think is just awesome. But then I think the first thing that I learned in my first marathon, it was just the humbleness. Like you have to put in the work. So it's not just, I kind of went in like, oh, I'm a runner, I can do this. And I think that's why I ended up stopping at every table with gummy bears. And, that did not go the way that I wanted it to. But I think just be humble, that it's going to take a lot of work. And it's not all work at a time. You got to be patient and add to it. And everyone is capable of doing that.
So at the beginning of marathon preparation, maybe you're 14, 16 weeks away from a marathon. Your longer run might be 8, 9, 10 miles.
Stuff out. But yeah, taking advantage of all those recovery tools too, because and just good shoes too. Because if you're running in shoes that are worn out, you're going to be taking the pounding instead of your shoes. So making sure you're running in shoes that are right for you, so you're not doing extra work that you need to. So.
And Varn, can I add something?
Please.
Keira mentioned perhaps the cross training, and I'm so glad you did, because one of the areas that we're seeing globally now amongst federations across the world is that, there's this sort of old school notion about you have to be running a ton to prep for a marathon, and you should build your volume. But especially in the beginning of a marathon prep, we're seeing now there's great benefit to be seen from pool running or stationary bike spinning or something like an elliptical or an elliptigo. Great ways to continue to improve fitness without the pounding as you ramp in. I coach a guy who's in his 60s preparing for marathons, and when we start marathon prep, so
training and something like an elliptigo. What about strength training? How does that fit into the picture? Keira, maybe you can start with talking about if you strength train or how much strength training you do while marathon training.
When I came back into this like second act, round 2 of my running, I told my coach, like, all I wanted to do was run. I was done with all the other stuff. I'm a busy mom, full-time job. I don't have time for all this other stuff. If I have 60 minutes to myself, I'm going to run for the 60 minutes. And that worked for a while until I got injured. Well, actually, what happened first is he would be like, okay, well, just do running, but then also maybe 1 or 2 days a week, can you add hurdles? So it's just running plus the hurdle mobility. So working on my hip strength. And I'm like, oh yeah, I mean, I could run and do one thing, that's fine. And then next season he'd be like, okay, well, you're running and doing hurdles and that's it. But why don't we add 1 or 2 days of Pilates every week just to build up that core and back? So could you do that, what you're doing now, just plus Pilates? So every season I added a little bit more. And when I look at what I'm doing now, 2 days a week, I'm doing hip mobility. 2 days a week, I'm doing special walks, of what I call them, but I'll take my shoes off. I'll get onto a grassy surface and I'll work on walking on my tippy toes, walking on my heels, doing some extra little things to build up foot strength and ankle strength. I do strength exercises probably 3 times a week, Pilates once or twice a week. I have my, just little like ankle stuff that I'll do. But when I look at everything I'm doing now, I'm doing some sort of extra little thing almost every day. Not on long runs day. That's just a long run. But it's funny because I've learned the only thing worse than doing all these little small things and I say small, but they really are big. The only thing worse than doing all of that is being injured. That sucks. So I've learned now, like, okay, coaches, tell me exactly what I need to do to stay healthy. So these are the things that allow me to keep running and to keep training. So yes, I do a lot of these extra things. And for me, I enjoy it now because I know it's helping me. I'm staying healthy and I'm strong. But at first I didn't enjoy it. I'll be brutally honest in that regard.
Yeah, sometimes when you're just used to running, lifting heavy things isn't always that fun, or even the mobility work. It's tough work, right? But it's vital, it sounds like, for you. Pete, any commentary from you on that? How do you advise kind of, people that are even newer to the sport to incorporate strength training into their routine?
I'm narcissistic enough to believe that maybe Keira's got a camera in the Zap weight room, because everything she just talked about, we're doing the hip mobility stuff 100%. So for all of the folks who are listening or watching this, so many injuries I've learned, especially over the last 10 to 15 years, come from weak glutes, weak hips. When we see folks who come to running camp here in the summer, one of the first things we look at is you'll watch them run toward you. And if they have a knee that sort of like dives to the center upon impact, they'll have, increased ground contact time. Weak hips, weak glutes can cause all sorts of issues down the kinetic chain, whether it's the psoas, whether it's the hip flexor, where it's the IT band, and even stuff below the knee and in the feet often comes from weak hips. And for us anyway, in the Western world, a lot of it is frankly just because we spend so much time doing what I'm doing right now, which is you're just seated. We're just seated a lot and not out and moving as much as frankly previous generations had. So strengthening of the hips, we do a lot of hip mobility and hip strengthening. And then there was another part of your question, but I've already forgotten it. Sorry.
No, that was good. So I think you guys have covered a lot. We've talked about the different types of workouts, the importance of cross training and strength training. One thing I wanted to just ask you is when it comes to mileage, how much does anybody running a marathon, and that's the beauty of the sport, right? Whether it's Keira, whether it's somebody doing it for their first time, they have to cover the same distance. They're covering the same course, and there's that similarity to it. So in terms of the mileage that Keira might be running when she's training for a marathon versus somebody else, how does that vary? And maybe even not taking it to Keira's extreme, but like the people who are newer to it have to run more because they don't have as much of a base of endurance, or are they running less because they're not used to it? Can you just kind of talk through that?
I'm sorry, are you talking to me?
Yeah,
I think this is a Pete question. Yeah.
Yeah. How do you advise your runners how much to run based on their levels?
No, I'm really glad you asked that because we track everything now, right? To the point where it's hard to find runners these days who occasionally leave the watch at home and just go out for I'm just going to go out for a run and I'm not going to Strava it with every last foot strike, which I actually think is a good thing on occasion, to go old school and just listen to your body and go out to the woods. But how much you run, I want to echo this, I said it before, how much you run matters in a marathon. And we have had people come to camp in the summer and they'll say, hey, I'm running, I'm averaging between 8 and 10 miles a week, and I want to run a marathon this year. And the truth is, I'm never going to, these are adults, they can do what they want, but I try to give them my best advice and say, look, I actually wouldn't advise that. Are you going to cross the finish line? Probably. But are you going to cross the finish line well? To do it well, whatever your age, whatever your ability, whatever your goals, doing something well, there's real honor in that. And how much you run matters. Now, I've worked with people who are running their first marathon and they were in their 30s and 40s and they were by and large quite healthy folks. And usually those are folks that I'll have them run, 35 to 45 miles a week and add an additional few hours of non-running exercise on top of that. Those same folks, fast forward 5 years, and they're usually running a good 25 to 35% more volume than that. Fast forward a few years beyond that, we have a woman who's come to running camp from Texas many times here. When she first came here, her first marathons, she was running 25 to 30 miles a week, and she has bumped that volume 8 to 10 miles a week, year by year by year, to the point where by the time she was in her late 40s, early 50s, she was running upwards of 65 to 70 miles a week, completely healthy, because she did it, as Keira said, she built on it bit by bit by bit with planned rest. So if I had to give you a baseline number, I really wouldn't advise too many people who are really trying to see what they can do in the marathon from doing so on less than about 25 to 35 miles a week, with perhaps some non-running exercise on top of that.
Super helpful. That's definitely a question that we get a lot. I'm going to
get some hate emails. I know.
Hey, that's okay, Pete.
Well, it's also hard to give an answer because it's so individual. So I think that's something you would need to chat with a coach and really figure out a plan that works for you. And then I love Strava. I post everything on Strava. I'm happy to share an open book, but I never go and scroll and compare what other people are doing. So if you are in Strava, it's fun because it can hold you accountable and you can get kudos for doing a run. So you feel like you have a community, sometimes even if you're running alone. But don't get in that game where you're comparing what other people are doing. Make sure you work out your plan with your coach and stick to your plan. Because like we've said before, there's multiple different ways to climb, and some people can do a little bit more mileage than others too. So
Awesome, guys. Well, we've talked a lot about the training, and I want to move into our discussion on fueling. But Keira, I'm going to give you the last word on this because we had a couple people that asked this question for you regarding training. So it's what's your favorite workout?
Oh man, I have a lot of favorite workouts. So I love getting into a marathon cycle and doing something short and fast on the track, but doing a lot of reps. But so starting out and doing some like 200s or some 400s, those for me are really fun. They build up speed, and then you get breaks all the time, like after every rep, which is fun. You don't have to run like, so I like starting with that. And to me, it's fun, it's doable, and it's like one of those start off workouts of the season that I feel like really excited about. So those are probably workouts I'd call fun. But I think the workouts for me where I feel the most powerful and the most ready, like I remember in particular right before Houston, it was about 3 weeks before, and I think it was about an 8-mile run. And then I did, I think a 10 to 12, I think it was about a 12-mile tempo at marathon pace. And then I did a little cool down. And I knew, so I don't like doing much more tempo miles than that. So that's why I kind of front load and do a little bit of like my normal run and then do a tempo after it. So I'm not doing like a 15, 16, 20-mile tempo run. But then I go in and I felt a little tired for the tempo because I had done a couple miles before then. But that was one workout that gave me confidence because I had run almost over 20 miles in that workout. I had hit some marathon pace, which I felt really confident. So those are the kind of workouts that just almost make me pee in my pants talking about because they're terrifying. But when you get there in the part of your marathon training, those are like the confidence building workouts. And so those are ones I wouldn't call them I wouldn't call them fun, but I feel like that's what, like, you get your bang for your buck on workouts like that. And that comes at the very, very end of a training cycle. So I know I just made people cringe hearing that workout. Yeah, that's not at the beginning of a cycle at all, but yeah, so those would be my favorites.
Good question. We got a good answer out of it too. So that was appreciate that. Well, awesome, guys. Let's talk about fueling. You know, there's really to spend all the time on your feet that you need to do to have success in the marathon. You certainly need to figure out how to fuel all those miles and find a nutrition plan that works for you. So I like to kind of set up the challenges because it's not easy to find a nutrition plan that works for you in a marathon. I mean, Keira's done 14 of these and she's had to try a lot of different things. Pete, I'm sure in your experience with athletes, the way athletes have fueled has probably evolved so much, and there's a lot of practice and experimentation. So, Pete, we'll start with you. What are some of like the universal challenges that you hear from athletes when it comes to fueling for a marathon?
In terms of universal challenges, a lot of athletes try to figure out gastrointestinal distress. What's something that I can take where I won't, have to run to the bathroom in the middle of a long run or in the middle of a race. I mean, most marathoners I know at some point have dealt with those things. How can I take in universal issues? How can I take in enough fluid? Me drinking 6 or 8 ounces each time I stop for a cup or for a bottle. If not practiced, that can be a real challenge for folks. And then lastly is just, again, the practice and the repetition of something that it's so important. And I'm always amazed at how many marathon runners, even really good ones, will not practice what they want to do on race day in the buildup. So those are some of the universal challenges I've seen a lot of athletes of all ages and abilities deal with.
Definitely. And this is something, just coming out of the Boston Marathon last weekend and talking to, thousands of runners over the course of the weekend, those challenges that you expressed are, even people coming into Boston where you're kind of like, these are the best of the best age groupers in a way. There's a lot of people that are still trying to figure out that fueling thing and expressing those challenges. So yeah, Pete, really good summary. Keira, how about for you? What are, as you've gained experience in the marathon, what are some of the things that you've had to overcome in terms of fueling?
Yeah, I have so much to say about this topic. And again, this is something that I've screwed up so many different ways and I've pieced it all together now. But I think my first 3, maybe 4 marathons, I was just running with whatever was on the course. I was grabbing it and drinking it. And the fourth one, it was kind of a fake it till you make it kind of thing. And then after the fourth one, I'm like, I feel like this is so gas in check. I'm going to talk with the nutritionist and really start honing in with what I should be doing on race day. And her first question was like, okay, so like, what have you been practicing? And I was like, what do you mean? I just grab whatever's on the course. And she's like, okay, how do I put this nicely? You're a knucklehead. But she explained like your stomach's a muscle and you need to train that muscle to be able to take in that amount of fluid, the amount of calories, the amount of sodium, the amount of electrolytes. So you need to be training that muscle over and over and over again. So like her first homework assignment she gave me, so the very beginning of a training cycle, she said, run with a bottled water and sip it every couple minutes and just get your body used to taking in fluids and like energy while you're running. And she goes, also make sure you're close to a bathroom. Because the first couple of times you do that, you're going to need to go a lot because your body's just not used to processing it. So for the first 2 weeks, I ran with a bottle every single time. And I did this little loop around a park that I knew there was a restroom with running water. So I just did these loops and I went to the bathroom a lot, but I trained my stomach to take in stuff while I was running. And so she's like, okay, good. We've gotten through phase one. It like towards the end of it, I felt comfortable straying away from the bathroom and just going out into the wild. So that's such a big part, which I think people don't really think about until it gets closer to race day. So at the very beginning, research what's going to be on the course or what you plan on taking and start practicing it and training your stomach. Because then when you get to a race, as soon as you take something in, your body's like, I know what to do with this. I'm going to process it. I'm going to be efficient. I'm going to send it all out and I'm going to put that energy where it's supposed to go. So that to me is like the biggest, it's like low hanging fruit. And I couldn't believe I couldn't figure it out on my own. So that's like the biggest thing is just start getting your body used to it. Like in order to finish a marathon, you need to be replenishing the fuel. And so that to me is the biggest thing is you start early, start doing your training. And then you also, when it gets closer and you're starting to do your long runs, you want to replicate then what's going to be on the course. So what we always do is I time, like say my goal is to run, I don't know, 5:15 per mile for the marathon. So I'll take that time and I'll set up my tables every whatever that is, 16 minutes or so in my run. So I'm not taking it every 5K, but I'm taking it at the time that I would be taking it on race day. And I think that's so important too, because then my body's used to, okay, every 16 or so minutes, I should be getting fluids at the same rate that I'd be getting fluids in the race. So I think you need to train your body with then the time to come to expect it. So then when you get to a race, you're taking it in at the right times. And taking in enough of like the gels. So on all of my long runs, I'm practicing I'm with the UCAN. So I take my Edge gels. So I'm taking them on long runs and I'm getting used to it now so I can process it. I could go on for so long. I'll finish this here, but I think what you do in training is so, so important. Most people, like including me, just waited till race day to try to put some energy in, and you need to be training your body throughout the whole cycle. So that's to me the most important thing.
Yeah, and in a way, you're almost like you're treating the fueling as almost a component of training, right? Like you're practicing, just as you laid out, and then Pete, you reiterated this as well. Like you need to simulate that and do it over and over and get that same repetition with fueling, just like you do with training. So really insightful. How about your like fueling or eating before a run? Like what do you do? You know, we'll talk a little bit in more detail about your overall routine with UCAN, but can you just like generally talk about your philosophy on like going into runs being fueled? Is that something you always try to do, or are there situations where you might not do that?
I always do it. I wake up and I have the same thing every single morning because I know it works for me. I know it like it sits well in my stomach, and I know I can go run afterwards. And I also
what is that, by the way?
Okay, so I'll get up and I'll have a bowl of steel cut oatmeal. And lately I've been getting funky in it and throwing some like hemp hearts and some blueberries, maybe some chia seeds, maybe like a scoop of peanut butter or something. But I'll have some sort of bowl of oatmeal, and then I'll have a cup of coffee. And then if it's a workout day, I'll get the UCAN energy in the morning. So I'll have like some electrolytes and some fluid. So I'll be preloading. But if it's not a workout day, I'll usually just go for water. But like more, I guess 3 days a week, I'll do like some sort of electrolyte drink. But that's like my morning routine, and I know it works. I'm confident with it. And so when people ask me like, what should I eat before a race? I'm like, what do you normally do? Like, we have 6 months of training for a marathon to prepare your body for what it's going to need that morning of a race. And then I try to do workouts around the same time that the race is going to be. So then I can practice when to get up, when to eat my breakfast, how much fluid should I be drinking, how much, UCAN should I be drinking on the way to like getting to my workout and everything. But I use like even today was just a workout, but I treated my morning routine like I would treat it on race day. So there's no questions in my mind. When I get to race day, I know what I need to do.
Very good. Pete, in terms of the kind of the evolution of fueling, a lot of the early kind of fueling methodology and research, I guess, was really built around fast acting carbohydrates, fueling with sugars. And there was a certain protocol that athletes were following, with your sugar-based energy gels, which is often fueling, say, every 15 to 30 minutes at shorter cycles. With UCAN, like Keira was talking about, that's more of a starch-based carbohydrate. It's a steady release instead of like a quick flash of energy. So there's a different kind of nutrient timing and fueling that people have experimented with UCAN. Can you just kind of speak from your perspective as a coach? Like, you've obviously coached athletes long before UCAN, you've coached athletes with UCAN since UCAN's been around. Can you kind of like compare the dosing and the fueling that you've seen with the two?
Yeah. So look, to be 100% fair, you look back to the era of, say, Frank Shorter, who, he was a big fan of like, defizzing cola-based products and taking simple sugar in. And, to this day, he'll talk about how he had some great success and some struggles with that in experimenting with it. But what we found on this team from the first time that I opened up UCAN and a couple of the athletes on our team said, let's try this, is there wasn't the big sugar, there wasn't the big spikes. Because you'll get some pretty great spikes with some simple sugar-based stuff where like over the course of 10 to 20 minutes, you'll feel phenomenal. But then you'll also get a bit of a crash on that. And with the cornstarch-based product with UCAN, particularly for those who can handle taking it more frequently, Emma Bates is a perfect example on the 5Ks for her, that there's a more steady non-spike based energy. And that was phenomenal, because prior, going back to when I started coaching in the 90s, everything was about just get as much sugar as you can possibly get in. And again, I want to be clear, there were those for whom that saw some success. But we're seeing athletes who would rather have a steady dose of energy over the long term. But I do think that you need to make sure that you're planning that out. You're looking at what you have to tell me, Varnum. I might be off. Is it 75 calories in an edge gel?
Correct. 70 calories.
70, yeah. That's one that you perhaps need to take just a touch more frequently from gun time to tape time, and that's going to take planning by your viewers. You might have to tape a couple of extra on the backside of your shorts or on the inside of your jog bra.
Absolutely, yeah.
And it's super positive result, at least from our crew.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting because it is kind of a newer system of fueling, and a lot of the traditional carbohydrate recommendations that you'll see are like 30 to 60 grams per hour, even up to 90 grams per hour for activity over 2 to 3 hours. And a lot of that research, of course, is both based on athletes at the peak of performance as well as based on sugar-based carbohydrates. So, then the sort of the first time runner sees that and they're trying to cram in 30 or 60 grams of sugar into their stomach over 4 or 5 hours for a marathon. And suddenly it's just like, man, my gut can't handle this. It's just too much over too long. With UCAN and Keira, I want to certainly dive into your experience. What's been so interesting is you've had sort of athletes that have found that with the steady release from the starch-based energy, like it's somewhat of the less is more approach. They don't need to take it as frequently, where you've had other athletes that have found like, hey, because this doesn't have the simple sugars and it's not such a gut bomb, I actually, like you were just saying, Pete, I actually can take this more frequently, and I could take 2 or 3 servings within a given hour, and it's much, much better on my stomach, so I could still get those 30 to 60 grams of carbohydrate per hour if I feel like that's what I need and that's what's making me feel the best, but I'm able to do it without putting so much sugar in the stomach. So it's kind of fascinating just to hear for different athletes and the way different people's metabolism works, you know, which kind of camp they fall into with UCAN. And coming out of Boston again, you know, we heard a lot of people that were in both camps, people that were like, hey, I can take 2 of these, you know, 70 calorie Edge energy gels per hour. So, you know, I'm getting my 30 grams of carbs and I feel great. And then you have other people being like, hey, I can run 4 or 5 hours and I just need 1 of these per hour. And it's amazing. It's so simple. It's so convenient. So that was my long preamble, but Keira, I think people really want to hear it from you and kind of hear your story with UCAN, both in terms of how you use it, but also like what compels you to use it. You know, you've had a ton of success in the marathon with the sugar-based approach, which I'm sure, you know, it's kind of maybe what you were doing first, but what made you feel like, hey, I want to look for something else? I feel like I can still fine tune something in my
Yeah. I think for a couple of years, I was just using like, the sugar-based approach. And I liked it because I would immediately feel that like surge in the race. But then like, I remember there was one race in particular where I felt that surge, but then I was also feeling the crash. So by the time I could see the water table, or even before that, I was like just getting hangry and just like coming down off of that. And that wasn't good. And then there was in a handful of races in a row and long like workouts where I practiced where my body was just rejecting it. It was just, I think got to the point where it was just too much sugar and I couldn't even take it down. My body wasn't even letting me put it in. And I was kind of, this is just gross, but I was burping a lot when I was running, like particularly at Worlds. Like I kind of threw up in my mouth because my body was like, you can't put any more of this in you. So I had to just ditch that. And as soon as you ditch that, especially as early on in the race as it was for me, I'm like, this isn't good. This is because I know how many calories and how much energy, and I know that I'm now at a deficit and this is not going to finish well. So I tried to drink water and get as much in, but like, I didn't even want to grab my water bottle. So I knew after Worlds this year that this isn't going well and I need to find like another solution. And that's when, the New Haven road race, I was standing on my feet after the race and my father-in-law just gave me a sample cup of it. And I was like, oh, this is really good. Can you get me more of it? Because I went right from the race to drug testing to somewhere else. And then someone walking by was like, oh, I can get you another cup. And I was like, oh, do you know a guy? And he's like, I am the guy. And I'm like, okay, we need to talk then, because this is awesome. And then through like talking to Varn and everything and learning about just a different system, like it just all started clicking to me. And I'm not trying to be dramatic here too, but in the last couple of years, there was twice I ended up in hospital after a marathon just because my body was crashing so hard. And I would get frequent headaches after a workout or a long run, just because I think I'm just too old to put that much sugar in my body. I'm not in my like teens anymore with a metabolism that can eat Skittles for dinner. But so anyways, I made the switch and this has been incredible for me that I have sustained energy. I'm not feeling the crash. I use an Edge gel every 10K and in between. So then every 5K, I'll drink some of the Edge energy. Or the Edge hydrate, excuse me. I use energy in the morning and then hydrate during the race. And I feel good. I don't have the crashes. I'm not feeling hangry and I feel sustained energy. And the fact now I've been training with it for months and months, my body knows what to do with that energy. And I just feel solid, which is great. I'm not having the headaches afterwards, which my husband appreciates, not having to drive me to the hospital again. But so it's been a really, really great switch for me, and just the whole array of products, because I felt like I was kind of piecemealing it before. And I can go into more detail because, and maybe this is kind of the next question, I'm just going to go into it. But in the week leading into the race, you want to be putting a lot of extra, and I should say race, workout, or long run. Like 2 days before, you want to be starting to load the electrolytes. So I'll drink the UCAN hydrate every day before that. And then I get up in the morning and I have the energy, the UCAN energy, and I'll be drinking that like on the bus to the marathon. And then during the race, sometimes right before the race, I'll take a gel right before. If not, I'll take it every 10K and then with the UCAN hydrate in between. And then after the race, and this is so important, after a workout, a long run, a hard effort, a hot run, a race, within 30 minutes of that, you want to be getting some sort of protein into your system within 30 minutes. So the UCAN has an awesome protein that I'll either just mix with water if I'm at the track and I don't have, that's the one. And they have some really good flavors too. I've been mixing them into a lot of smoothies lately, which have been awesome, but you can also just mix it with water and drink. But that is so important for your recovery because that immediately goes and gives your muscles like the energy that it needs to repair so you can get back the next day and not feel as crappy. So this whole suite of products, and like, I definitely feel like I'm trying to sell something right now, but it comes from a really genuine place of a lot of failure to be able to find a brand that has worked so great for me. So I'm happy to share my journey.
And Varn, if I can just toss this in, I don't think, I don't even know Keira that well, but you think about it, in the history of marathoning for American women, there have been 3 who have run under 220, and one of them is in front of you. And 2 of those 3 are people who are using UCAN as part of their training, and the third, Dina Castor, I don't think it was available for her in 2004, so or 2006, excuse me. But anyway, they're not gonna use products that aren't gonna have a high degree of efficacy. But I'm glad that Keira mentioned the protein post workout in terms of muscle recovery. Again, it's just really the last 20 years that we've known such things, that getting in, I mean, you know, 1 serving of the UCAN, again, you tell me if I'm wrong, Varn, but I think it's at somewhere between 19 and 21 grams of protein, super absorbable. And, you know, for some people, it might be half a chicken sandwich, right? But this is a little bit easier to stomach after you've done a hard 10-mile run or an interval session, or you've done a hilly hot run. And we've learned so much. I mean, I remember competing after college when, you know, people would have these giant windows of the day with no calories in their system whatsoever. And we've just learned a lot. You know, you don't want to go big windows of your day, even not during the run, even just windows of your day sans calories. You know, cortisol is a stress hormone. And if you go big windows without any calories, your body is flooded with cortisol. Cortisol can actually increase the rates of things like stress fractures. So like fueling consistently is important, period.
Yeah, great insight for you both. And there's really not much more for me to add. I just wanted to maybe tie together a couple of things you both said. I think one, you know, what's really interesting hearing Keira talk about UCAN is like when the first conversation we had, it was really like, as Keira and Pete have both described, the different energy system and the different like energy delivery that UCAN offers. When we were talking about the challenges she was having, it was like, this might really be a fit for what you're experiencing. So it was super, like, I think, applicable to what you were going through. And it's good to hear, you know, how much success you've had and how you've really felt that steadiness and energy. I also just wanted to add that as Keira and Pete are talking about the different UCAN products, whether it's the energy powder that Keira uses as a preload, or whether it's the gel, or whether it's the protein, everything with UCAN is based around the same slow release starch-based energy instead of sugar. So that's kind of consistent throughout the product. So it's just in different formats, and, you know, the powder is easier to use as a shake before you run. The gel obviously is the prime product to use during the run, and then the protein has carbs and protein, so you're getting this steady release of carbs as well as the 20 grams of protein. So if you can, I'll just leave it with, if you can kind of identify with any of the issues that Keira and Pete have pointed out that a lot of runners running distance face, from the GI distress to the inconsistent energy, UCAN is definitely something that's different. You know, now obviously everybody has to try it, and it's either going to work for you or it's not, and that's totally fine. But it's a different way of fueling, and it's something that would be worth considering if you haven't had success. Because, you know, when you hop from one brand of sugar to the other, you know, if one's giving you a problem, I mean, maybe there's something in another one that won't. But kind of like that ultimately could be the issue you're having. It's not with the brand; it's just simply the amount of sugar you need to consume. And UCAN is definitely something that can allow you to fuel without all the sugar. And just in case this wasn't clear enough, like, I just want to add it, it's carbs, you know, so carbs are like, for runners, like, carbs are what are going to drive fueling and drive endurance for most people, you know. And I know we had a few questions from fat adapted athletes who said, like, hey, would this work for me? And I think what's interesting about UCAN is because it's designed not to spike your blood sugar, because it's designed not to spike your insulin and give you this really steady release. It's very compatible with different types of diets, So the examples I gave earlier in terms of how much UCAN people are using, like if you're somebody that is eating a lot of carbohydrate in your diet, then like, hey, maybe you're going to use a little bit more of UCAN because that's the system your body's running on. If you're somebody that is lower carb but still training for endurance, like the less is more approach with UCAN might be exactly what you need. You're just getting that steady drip of carbohydrate to support your energy. So yeah, it's really compatible with different types of nutrition plans, and once again, just a different type of energy than you'll get from sugar. Well, Keira and Pete, we're almost on time. Let me wrap it up here with a few questions for both of you. So Keira, I will start with you. Race day routine. What do you do? Let's call it from the night before the race to all the way through the end. Take us through kind of like your sleep routine, what else you do, what you feel, how you fuel, everything.
Okay. I'm so glad this question was asked because I think it's really important to consider what you're eating 2 days before the race. And 2 days before the race, I avoid beans. I avoid like heavy dairy. I don't do really heavy meals or anything. So I think that's something that I'm very conscious of. And so before races or workouts, I just make sure I'm putting things in my body that aren't going to run right through me because I don't want to have that on a race day. And I think that's just important for whatever reason to say. But so the day before the race, usually my go-to meal the night before is rice, chicken, sweet potatoes, some sort of vegetable. Those are all foods that I eat very, very frequently. And so I know they're going to work for me. And those rice and sweet potatoes are really great carbs to really like load in the night before. And then I try to like just sit there for a little bit and see if I can get any more in, because there's sometimes you're a little bit nervous the night before and you don't want to eat everything. And if you're like, okay, I'm done, I'm going to leave. So I just eat all I can. And then I just sit there for a little bit and think like, could I have a roll or with some butter on it? Could I add a little bit more? Because you want to make sure you're getting enough energy in and not letting nerves like dictate that. I try to go to bed a little bit earlier than normal and give myself some wind down time. I play stupid little games on my phone to like totally distract my mind. So I'm not thinking about the race, because whenever we think about races, we can't sleep. But then I also know like if I sleep or if I don't sleep, that's fine, because there have been so many workouts I've done where I've been up every 2 hours with a sick child or with a husband snoring. So I'm used to not sleeping as much, just having a crazy life, I guess. So on a race day, I don't let that stress me out, because then as soon as you get stressed out, then it's even harder to sleep. So just be like, you know what, I'm going to sleep or I'm going to not sleep. And for me, when I like to pick races away from my family and be in a hotel room by myself. So I usually sleep awesome when I'm not with my family, but I think that's a big part of it. So just get sleep or don't get sleep. It's not going to matter because you slept well the rest of the week. And then, and then race morning, I try to get up and have some food, I guess about 3 or so hours before my race. I like to look cute for races because then I'm feeling good. So I make sure I'm like just feeling good about myself, and and just go to the race and do what you got to do. So that's kind of a weird, my weird little routine.
Awesome. I love that. I'll throw this one to both of you. Strategies to keep your mind occupied during a long run. Keira, why don't we go with you and then we'll have Pete next.
A friend or a podcast. So find a buddy to run with you. Those are awesome when you have someone that you can like chat with, especially like a fun friend, like maybe you don't get like the friend that, you kind of have to pull teeth with and ask questions, because then you're stuck with them for a long run. So maybe a podcast would be better in those. But if you can find a fun friend that's willing to go with you, or even if you have a fun friend that you can run 10 miles before and then pick them up and have someone to finish your run with. So they don't need to do their whole long run, even just looking forward to running with your fun friend. But then I do a lot of podcasts. So I have headphones and I'll listen to some fun podcasts, sometimes running related, sometimes not, because I don't want to overthink running, but I just kind of zone out and just enjoy it. And I think also going places that you like to be and just feeling happy in that environment, I think is important too. Pete, how about you?
Well, I'm glad you said running partners, because there's actual real science to back this, that actually running with others, there's reduced perceived exertion. Actually similar to a strong cup of coffee. So a good running partner is as good as any strong cup of coffee. Also just the emotional well-being of having someone to run with, not someone to run against, but someone to run with, someone who really pairs well with you. And then the other one, Varn, is one we've already talked about. And I think it's one of the true secrets in marathon prep. I don't think there are actually any real secrets, but I believe one of the greatest coaches in the history of our country is the late Bill Squires, who coached the Greater Boston Track Club in the 70s and 80s. And Bill was a big fan of doing surges during long runs, pickups. And we do that on virtually every long run we do with our crew here, whether they're preparing for marathons or not. And that might be something as simple as every 10 minutes, just do a 1 minute pickup. Not super hard, but just like every 10th minute, I'm going to pick the pace up 15 or 20 seconds a mile. And at the end of that minute, I'll back off to my previous surge pace and do that for the course of the long run, whether your longest run is an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. And it's amazing how pickups and surges in a long run can make a long run, a 2 hour long run, feel like a 40-minute run because it's what you're thinking about next. So surges in your long runs are a great way to make them more playful and fun and make them go by quicker.
Really good. I'm going to end it on this one. For all of our first timers in the audience, and I got to say, guys, we're here at almost an hour. I told you we weren't going to go longer than 45 minutes. Obviously, I lied, but you know what? People aren't leaving. So I figured people like hearing from you, so we'll keep it going. But we will end on this one. For all the first time marathoners or aspiring marathoners in the audience, any advice or tips for people who are doing this for the first time? You've obviously, so much of what you guys have said has encompassed what's important for anybody to do, whether it's a first timer or not, but anything specific for our first timers. Pete, we'll go with you.
Okay.
I'll just leave it at simple, which is just be patient and embrace the process. And when you run that first marathon, run the first 25 kilometers, run the first 15 plus miles, a touch slower than you think you should, just a hair, be conservative. Because if you can finish your first marathon by closing well over the course of that last 5 to 6 miles, you'll be hungry to go after a second one. If you can do it, it's better to do that than walk away as the death march on your first one. Be conservative early on.
Keira, how about you?
Yeah, that's patience is just marathoning. If you can be patient, then that's good. But I think the advice is just enjoy the ride. Like I said at the beginning, this is a journey. Like marathoning can really change your life. And I think to be patient, to be gracious to yourself, to stick to your plan. And whenever I've made it to the start, kind of with Pete's point earlier, every start line of marathon I've ever been on, every marathon start line, I've cried because I'm just so proud I got that far. And then somewhere along that race, you're going to think I can't do this, and if worse gets to, if it turns bad, you just walk for a little bit and that's okay. It's still a marathon. You're covering the distance, even if you have to walk a little bit. And I think probably at least 3 or maybe 4 or 5 of my marathons I've had to stop and walk. I ran one last fall in Berlin and I had to stop and walk a little bit. That's okay. But I made it to the finish line. And when you make it to that finish line, you do some crazy pose because those pictures you're going to have forever that you're just so proud that you were able to run 26.2 miles. Why do we do this? I don't know, but it's incredible. And I'm just so proud of everyone starting on that journey. And it's a really life-changing experience. So I'm really excited to hear how it goes. So let me know when you finish your marathon, how it went, if you use any of my voice, if it was terrible. And glad Pete was here to help me out with some of the stuff. But
hey Varn, I got to throw one thing in. I'm sorry to extend this by 30 seconds.
Okay.
So for everyone watching this, you've got to follow Keira on Strava, because the thing that Keira likes to toss in are dad jokes into her Strava posts, which every Zap athlete knows and campers here know. I love dad jokes, and I brought one today for Keira.
Wow, what a special treat.
Oh my gosh, I can't wait. Tell me.
So Keira, I don't know if you knew this, but I used to be a fisherman. And for a while, I dated a mermaid. I met her online.
That's good. And I will say 9 times out of 10, when people tell me a joke, I've heard it before. I haven't heard that one.
All right.
So, and I'll leave everyone with this, that I really want to stress the importance of eating dried grapes. It's all about raising awareness.
I will use that with my children later on this evening.
Raising awareness. It's good. Raisins are good anyways, but it's also a good joke.
Barn,
so.
you had no idea what you were getting into.
I was just, I think I could sum this up by saying you guys are both truly one of a kind. And I really appreciate all the information, the audience does too, all the information you brought to the table. So yeah, thanks so much for being part of this. It was really fun hanging out with both of you. Thanks to everybody who gave up some time this afternoon to join us. It's super fun. Ran into many of you in Boston who said you like to watch these. So that makes us feel good. And that makes us want to do more of these. We got a lot of fun and great athletes and coaches in the UCAN network. So stay tuned. More of these to come this year. But for Keira and Pete, just want to thank you guys so much. Everyone will get a recording of this here in a little bit, so you can rewatch, take notes, follow their words of wisdom. But we really, really appreciate you joining us today. Thank you so much. Keira and Pete, this is always abrupt. When I hit leave, we all just get disconnected. So this will be my official goodbye to you as well.
Bye,
Really
everyone.
enjoyed it.
Thanks for having me.
Go kick ass, everybody.
All right.
Rooting
Talk to
for
everybody
ya.
soon. Take care. Thank you.